Your great-grandmother fed a family through an entire winter without a refrigerator, no electricity, no freezer, no cold chain, and nobody got sick. She knew something you don't, something that was never passed down to you. That knowledge didn't vanish by accident. It was made obsolete on purpose. Walk into any kitchen today and pull the plug on the refrigerator. Give it 3 days, and the meat inside turns into a biological weapon. That is the entire foundation of how you eat. One appliance, one power line. Your ancestors would have laughed at how fragile that makes you. For most of human history, there was no such thing as a cold chain, and humans still ate meat through famines, through wars, through Arctic winters. They did it with salt, with fat, with smoke, and with patience. The methods worked so well that armies marched on them for months. Welcome to the Survival Research. If you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and the bell. This is the channel that digs up the knowledge other people let get buried. Then refrigeration arrived, and an entire body of human knowledge was switched off. Not because it stopped working. It works exactly as well today as it did then. It was switched off because there was no money in a skill you do yourself for free. Here's the part nobody tells you. There is no law against preserving meat at home. None. You can salt, cure, smoke, render, and store meat in your own kitchen today, and you are breaking no rule by doing it. The confusion that keeps people paralyzed is a deliberate blurring of two different things. Selling meat commercially is heavily regulated. The Federal Meat Inspection Act is real, and any meat sold to the public must come from a USDA-inspected facility. But preserving meat for your own household has always been completely legal. The industry that profits from your dependence never bothers to correct the confusion, because a confused person keeps buying. A confused person never tries. Stop for a moment, because this is the part that matters. There are 3 preservation methods I'm going to break down in this video, and each one keeps meat edible for months with 0 electricity. Pemmican, the survival food that outlasts almost everything in your pantry. Confit, the fat sealing method that medieval Europe used before iceboxes existed. And salt curing, the technique that fed entire navies across the ocean. It is all in the survival research documentation, step by step with the science. The link is in the description, but stay here because the video is just getting started. The first method is the one the explorers swore by, pemmican. It is almost insultingly simple, and that simplicity is exactly why it works. You take lean meat and you dry it until it shatters instead of bending. Not jerky, drier than jerky, until there's almost no water left inside it. Water is what bacteria need to live. Remove the water, remove the threat. If you have made it this far, you already understand more than most people ever will. Subscribe and share this with someone who refuses to depend on a power grid. Everything the cold chain industry made you forget is in the documentation. Link below. Now stay with me, because the science of how this actually works is the heaviest part. Then you grind that bone dry meat into a coarse powder. Separately, you render fat. Beef tallow from kidney fat is the gold standard. You melt it down, strain out every impurity, and let it run clear. You mix the meat powder and the rendered tallow in roughly equal parts by weight. The fat seals every particle of meat away from air and moisture. That is the whole secret. Dry meat has no water. Pure fat has no water. Combine them and you have a food that bacteria simply cannot colonize. Properly made pemmican, stored cool and dark, lasts 1 to 5 years. British troops in the Boer War carried pemmican rations that kept for decades. Arctic explorers like Shackleton trusted their lives to it. The enemy is not bacteria. The enemy is rancidity, fat going off when it meets air. So you keep it sealed, cool, and away from light. That is the entire maintenance. The second method is confit. The French word simply means preserved. Restaurants now sell it as a delicacy, but its origins were pure survival. Medieval families used it to carry meat through winters with no refrigeration at all. The principle is fat as a barrier. The same logic as pemmican, applied differently. You start by salting the meat. Salt pulls moisture out and seasons it deep. You rub the cuts with coarse salt and herbs and let them rest a full day in a cool place. Then you rinse off the salt completely and dry the meat until no water remains on it. This step is not optional. Any water left behind shortens the life of the whole batch. Then you cook the meat, slowly, fully submerged in its own rendered fat. Low and slow for hours, until the fat has cooked the meat tender all the way through. The low heat does 2 jobs at once. It cooks the meat, and it sterilizes the fat. Then you pack the meat into a clean container and cover it completely with that fat. As the fat cools, it hardens into a solid seal. No air reaches the meat. No air, no spoilage. Stored in a cool place below, about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Confit keeps for months. Fatty cuts like pork shoulder, pork belly, duck, and goose work best for this. The same fat that scares people on a nutrition label is the exact thing preserving the meat. That is the irony the food industry would rather you never sit with. Now let me be honest with you, because honesty is what separates this channel from the rest. None of these methods are magic, and none of them forgive carelessness. If your meat is not dried completely, pemmican grows mold. People learn this the hard way. If you skip the salt or undercook the confit, you are gambling with botulism. Clostridium botulinum is the real danger in low oxygen, low acid environments. This is why curing salts with nitrites exist, and why old recipes are followed exactly. These techniques demand respect and precision. They reward it with food that lasts. What they do not require is a factory, a license, or permission from anyone. The third method is the oldest of all, salt curing. For thousands of years, salt was so valuable that empires were built around it. The reason is simple. Salt does to bacteria what drought does to a desert. It pulls the water straight out of the meat and out of any microbe trying to grow. You pack the meat completely in salt or you submerge it in a heavy brine. The salt draws the moisture out through simple osmosis day after day. What is left is meat too dry and too salty for bacteria to ever take hold. Salt-cured pork fed the navies that crossed every ocean on Earth. It fed soldiers in both world wars under the name bully beef. Sea salt alone is enough. You do not need anything exotic to make it work. And here's the pattern, the thing that connects all three methods together. Pemmican removes the water, Confit removes the air, salt curing removes both. Every single one of them attacks the same enemy from a different direction. Bacteria need water, oxygen, and a comfortable temperature to multiply. Take away even one of those, and the meat stops being a place where rot can live. That is not folklore. That is microbiology your ancestors understood through hard experience. They could not run to a store, so they learned the rules of decay and beat them. Here is the dark truth nobody in the food aisle wants to say out loud. The cold chain did not make you safer. It made you dependent. It took a skill every household once owned and turned it into a service you rent. Refrigeration, frozen logistics, and processed shelf foods became a multi-billion-dollar system. And the price you paid was the knowledge itself. An entire generation forgot how to eat without a plug. There is no conspiracy here. No secret meeting, just the quiet math of an industry. A skill you do for free generates no profit, so nobody had a reason to teach it to you. The result is the same as if it had been banned. The knowledge simply went dark. So now you're standing at the same fork your great-grandmother stood at. You can stay completely dependent on a power line that fails in every serious crisis. Or you can learn what humans knew for 10,000 years before the refrigerator. The meat preservation that built civilizations is not lost. It was only forgotten. Your great-grandmother never asked permission to feed her family. She simply knew how, and that knowledge was her independence. That same independence is sitting in a bag of salt, a block of tallow, and a willingness to learn. Nothing more. The grocery store wants you to believe food security is something you buy. It is not. It is something you build with your own hands in your own kitchen. I pinned a comment with the three methods laid out and the exact ratios that matter. Pemmican, Confit, and salt curing, with the proportions that decide success or failure. Read it, because the difference between food that lasts and food that rots is in the details. One wrong ratio of meat to fat, one skipped drying step, and months of work spoils. The people who get this right are the ones who treat the small numbers as seriously as the big idea. And if this opened your eyes, subscribe so the next fault does not pass you by. Share it with someone who still believes the grid will always be there. This knowledge did not die. It was waiting for someone to dig it back up. The next thing we uncover is heavier than this one. I will see you there.